Most people think they've seen Fiordland. They haven't. Every year, over 1 million visitors make the 3-hour drive from Queenstown to Milford Sound. They board a boat, cross the fjord, look up at Mitre Peak, rising 1,692 meters straight from the water, and take the photograph. And then they leave believing they have experienced one of the world's great wilderness areas. What they have experienced is a single point of access in a park that contains 14 named fjords, more than 12,500 square kilometers of unroaded terrain, and a degree of structural inaccessibility that makes it unlike any other national park on Earth. There is one more detail worth knowing before we go further. That famous location, Milford Sound, is not technically a sound at all. It is a fjord. Named incorrectly by early European explorers, the mistake has stood for 200 years. It is the most photographed misidentification in the country. This is the part of Fiordland that most visitors never find out exists. The only road in there is one road into Milford Sound, a single sealed highway that passes through the Homer Tunnel, a 1.2-kilometer bore cut through solid mountain, and descends into the fjord valley below. That road took over 20 years to complete. It was begun in 1929 and finished in 1954. Avalanche risk closes it regularly in winter. In some years, it is impassable for weeks. There is no road into Doubtful Sound, no road into Dusky Sound, no road into Preservation Inlet, no road into 11 of the 14 named fjords that give Fiordland its name. Doubtful Sound takes its name from Captain James Cook, who sailed along the coastline in 1770 and chose not to enter. He doubted whether the prevailing wind would allow him to sail back out. The word doubtful on every map of New Zealand is a 250-year-old record of hesitation. To reach it today requires a boat across Lake Manapuri, a bus over a mountain pass, and a second boat into the fjord itself, a journey of half a day in each direction. Doubtful Sound is 3 times the length of Milford and 10 times the surface area. It receives roughly 1% of the visitor numbers. On most days, the fjord is empty. The other 12 are harder still. What the rainfall builds. Fiordland receives between 6,000 and 9,000 millimeters of rainfall annually in its interior valleys. It feeds the rivers that carved the valleys. It sustains the temperate rainforest, one of the largest intact temperate rainforests in the southern hemisphere, that covers the valley floors and lower slopes. After heavy rain, the cliff faces around Milford Sound run with dozens of temporary waterfalls that didn't exist the day before. The permanent ones, like Sterling Falls, at 155 meters, are dwarfed by the temporary cascades that follow a storm. The same rainfall creates a layer effect inside the fjords themselves. Fresh water flowing off the land sits on top of the denser salt water below, forming a dark surface layer that filters out ultraviolet light. This has allowed deep water species, black coral, sea fans, organisms typically found at depths of 40 meters or more, to survive at depths of just 6 to 8 meters in several of the fjords. Dive the Fiordland fjords, and the walls look nothing like any other dive site in the world. In Fiordland, what exists 5 meters below the surface bears no resemblance to what exists on the surface above it. A valley almost lost. In the late 1960s, Fiordland came close to a different kind of transformation. The proposal triggered New Zealand's first major environmental campaign. At the time, it was the largest petition ever presented to a New Zealand parliament. The scheme was eventually abandoned. Lake Manapuri remains at its natural level. Doubtful Sound remains accessible by the existing route. What the campaign revealed is worth noting separately from its outcome. A landscape that the majority of New Zealanders had never visited, and that most never would, was judged worth protecting at national scale. Fiordland's value was not measured by visitor numbers. It was measured by the fact that it existed at all. The tracks that require a plan. The Rootburn Track, which crosses the Southern Alps into Fiordland's northern edge, operates under similar restrictions. Between these two tracks and the coastal access points, there is almost nothing. No maintained trail network, no infrastructure. The interior, the majority of the park's 12,500 square kilometers, is traversed by expedition parties using topographic maps, compass navigation, and multi-day river crossings. The Department of Conservation classifies most of this interior terrain as remote backcountry. The practical meaning of that classification is this: if something goes wrong in there, help is not close. What lives in the inaccessible part? The structural isolation of Fiordland has produced ecological consequences that would not be possible in a more accessible environment. What visitors see as ancient and permanent is, in geological terms, recent. The Fiordland crested penguin nests along the remote coastline of the park's southern fjords. More significant still is the takahe. This large flightless bird was officially declared extinct in 1898 after decades without a confirmed sighting. In 1948, ornithologist Jeffrey Orbell located a small surviving population in the Murchison Mountains, a remote subalpine valley in the interior of Fiordland that had been effectively unreachable. The bird had survived precisely because the terrain made human access so difficult. Today, the takahe recovery program monitors a population that has grown from approximately 250 birds at its lowest recorded point. The majority still live in the Murchison Mountains. The inaccessibility that nearly caused the species to be forgotten is the same quality that allowed it to survive. Fiordland National Park is 12,523 square kilometers. Visitors to Milford Sound move through a corridor that represents a small fraction of that total area. This is not a criticism of the experience. Milford Sound is extraordinary. Mitre Peak is real. The waterfalls are real. The sense of scale looking up at those vertical walls is not manufactured, but scale is also part of what goes unseen. Fiordland is not defined by what is visible from the road or the boat. It is defined by the 14 fjords, the untracked interior, the valley that a nation fought to protect without ever visiting, the flightless bird that survived extinction in a valley nobody could reach. Most visitors leave without knowing any of that exists, which means that for the majority of people who visit, they have seen where the road ends. They have not seen the park. If this changed how you see Fiordland, the guide linked in the description goes further. It's an alternative guide to the park, built around everything this video couldn't cover. The Doubtful Sound access route, the permit windows for the Milford and Rootburn tracks, the seasonal timing that avoids the Homer Tunnel closure risk, and the southern fjords accessible only by boat or light aircraft. Just click the link below to get started.